So the N64 is a system that's near and dear to my heart, but to be honest with you, I don't think I've played on one in at least 7 years. Not that I haven't played N64 games, because I definitely have. I do a playthrough of Ocarina of Time every year around Christmas, and lately I've been getting really into Super Mario 64 ROM hacks and also Zelda randomizers. But I've been getting into all of this on my PC through an emulator with an Xbox One controller. See, the N64, it has great games, but the console itself? It's a 240p system that only outputs through the red, white and yellow cables, so the picture by today's standards is not great. And made even worse by how it's transported from the console to the TV. You could mod the console and upscale the graphics and make it more clear, but the thing about that is that the low resolution and the fuzzy signal hides the console's washed out graphics, so that's not great. The games themselves, they come on cartridges, and you can only input one cartridge at a time, and you have to get up from the couch every time you wanna go change your game and bend down to do it, and getting the cartridge in and out of the system is hard work, and it feels like you're gonna snap the pin connectors or something. It's not great. And then there is the issue with ROM hacks. A lot of ROM hacks utilize a hack that allows the emulator to use more RAM than the console originally had through some trickery that uses the original expansion pack as a jumping off point. So we can't play ROM hacks, and unless we get the expansion pack, we can't play Majora's Mask or Donkey Kong 64 either, which is not great. And then there is the memory thing. You can make some games run faster, which is a much needed thing, because some of the games only run at 18 FPS, and that's not great. And then there is, finally, the N64 controller, the mighty Trident. It's not great. But there is one thing that the original N64 has on an emulator on a PC, and that's the ritual of heading home from a journey, school, work, or maybe just a good walk with the dog, kicking off your shoes, throwing your jacket on the ground and jumping up on the couch and turning on the system and just enjoying the console experience and being totally enveloped in it. A PC just can't do that. You gotta turn on the system, sync the controller, start your emulator, config the controls again, start the game, full screen the thing, mute all the notifications, etc, etc, etc. But we can take the console part off all that, and we can combine it with the good elements of an emulator, like the higher resolution, better graphics, better controller, better run speed, yada yada yada. And we can make the ultimate N64 experience that you can enjoy the same way you would a normal N64, but it just won't be shit. This is a how-to on how to build the ultimate N64 Emulation Station. So, game plan. We're gonna need a small form factor PC, a monitor, a controller that will work for N64 games, some sort of front-end emulation program that can be navigated with the controller, and finally a console mod that will make the small form factor PC look a little bit like an N64. Sounds easy enough, so let's go online and let's do some shopping. For the small form factor PC, I went with a refurb site where I get all of my PCs from that I use in my business. And here I found a €100 unit with 4 gigs of RAM, an Intel HD 4000 GPU chip, and an i5 CPU that will be more than enough for what we needed to do. For the controller, I knew I wanted a wireless, as the Randolph homestead here is located inside a magical forest that is full of pets and animal friends, and if there is a wire, then at some point an animal friend will get tangled in the wire, and whatever the wire is attached to will get pulled down from wherever it was resting, and it will get smashed. After a bit of searching, I found the Hyperkin Admiral, and then I ordered that. It's a wireless N64 controller that forgoes the Trident design of the original and opts for a more Dreamcast-like shape. The cool thing is that it works for both PC and N64, so if I ever feel like playing on original hardware, I have that option. The last thing I needed to shop for online was a front end. I initially looked at a few free ones like Attract Mode and M-Galaxy, but they didn't offer what I was looking for, so I finally caved and bought a Launchbox license, which would let me use the controller-friendly big box application. For the monitor, I decided to go for quite the bargain and I headed to the dump to see if there was anything good. At first I found a 480p monitor that is the silver beast that you'll be seeing during the initial setup. But after a few more trips, I managed to score a perfectly functional 960p monitor, which will make the N64 games really pop when uprest in Project 64. Now I just had to wait for the parts I ordered to arrive, and I didn't have to wait long, as I got a message a couple of hours after I picked up the monitor saying that the PC I had ordered, it had arrived. The controller was coming all the way from America, so I figured that I might as well configure the PC while I waited for that, and boy was that a good decision. I apparently didn't order from my regular refurb place and instead ordered from the place refurb.dk. Which doesn't even sound remotely similar to my regular refurb place itlersal.dk, and the websites look nothing alike, but I don't know how I fucked that up. Anyways, my regular refurb place delivers ready-to-go solutions, and even though refurb.dk say they also do that, they sure as shit do not. First off, I'm pretty sure I saw an HDMI out listed on this thing, and it doesn't have one of those, it has a DisplayPort out. Which means that I have to order a thing from some warehouse store, China, because I'm sure as shit not gonna find a display cable at the dump, and it's even less likely that I'll find a monitor that accepts that format. Problem number 2, this was sold to me as having Wi-Fi, and it does have a Wi-Fi chip on the board. However, in order for a unit like this to receive a decent signal, it's gonna need an antenna which attaches at the back of the unit, which this does not. So I'm gonna have to run an Ethernet cable from my workspace in the kitchen to the living room where the router is to get an internet connection. And boy do I fucking need one. Normally when you refurb these units and you sell them as ready to go, you install the latest version of Windows 10 before you ship it out, because if you don't and you do what these fucking guys did and just install the stock 2016 versions of Windows 10, nothing fucking works. Everything fucking lags and it needs to update for a week. Yes, a fucking week. While the updates were going on, I couldn't connect a Bluetooth Xbox One controller to test any of the games out, because the update that makes the PC recognize controller is apparently queued to be the last update in this 5-year update cycle. While this was going on and the controller was making its way across the Atlantic, I installed Launchbox and its controller-friendly cousin, BigBox. For the games, I got into Hackerman mode and opened an incognito tab and went to the forbidden place that has everything. Oh no, not that fucking place. Here's the thing, I don't condone piracy unless it's due to one of the 4 following reasons. If you don't have the money to buy the thing, maybe regional pricing is terrible. Or the thing is not available, maybe it's region locked or only available on an outdated piece of media. Or the company is terrible, like Disney, Steam, Google, and specifically how they censor their product to appease to Chinese censorship even outside China, or create separate Chinese government approved censored versions of their products, despite the people who will use these things begging them not to. Or you already own the thing that you're downloading, like here in Denmark it's legal to make copies of a piece of media that is already available to you for your own personal use. And if you own a physical product, you are then allowed to obtain a backup of that product, regardless if the method of doing so is illegal or not, since it's on the copyright holder or licensee holder to provide you, the client or licensee, with a method to back up your purchase. And that in the end makes it legal for Danish consumers to just pirate everything that's not being sold online through some complicated legal shenanigans. So until Nintendo gets their act together and either makes a platform that lets you scan old games you own and download digital versions of them, or, I don't know, put their entire fucking back catalog online, I'm gonna go ahead and download this neatly wrapped 16 gig package that contains the entire North American N64 catalog, with the PAL and JP versions of games included for those regionally exclusive releases, plus the universal region ports if they exist. Amazing. Instead of installing Launchbox on the PC's hard drive, I will actually set up the PC to sync with my OneDrive. And I added a folder for Launchbox and installed it there, and then put all the N64 games in that folder as well. This way, if I feel like adding a game on emulator or even just make changes to the Big Box app, I don't have to touch the PC itself and set it back to being a regular Windows machine, as I can just make any needed changes on any of my other PCs, and then it will sync with the N64 system when it's turned on. I'm actually gonna pat myself on the shoulder for that one. This is a pretty brilliant idea, and you don't need a 1 TB cloud solution like I have. The free 20 or 30 gig version of OneDrive will be more than enough, at least if you're planning on putting an entire cartridge-based systems library on it, or 50-ish PS1 games or 15-ish PS2 games. So after I got all of that downloaded and synced and the Windows updates got done downloading, I plugged in an Xbox One controller and then I tested the games. As expected, they ran full speed even with all the graphical hacks enabled, and while I will have to enable and disable 60 FPS hacks for each game individually over time, the emulator and its setup is more or less ready to go, and even the hacks that made use of the 8MB chip hack run butter smooth. I'm sure that you can get an Android-based system to run N64 fine, and I've seen examples of that, but in my opinion Project 64 with all its options is absolutely fucking king. And it's definitely worth it spending some extra money on getting a Windows-based system that can run it with all its settings. I am very satisfied with this. Finally, while I still had a keyboard and mouse installed, I configured the Windows shell with the help of a little thing a forum user made for Launchbox, and now the PC will not boot into Windows Explorer but straight into BigBox. If I need to access Windows proper for whatever reason, I can just plug in a keyboard and hit Ctrl+Alt+Delete, and in the Run tab input Run Explorer, and Windows will work as it does on a normal PC. By this point, if I had to come up with a thing I regret for this project, I would say not spending the 20 to 30 extra euro on an SSD. Sure, it's no big deal, really. I can just turn on the machine and go make coffee and come back 2 minutes later and it will be ready to go. But my laptop, which roughly has the same specs as this but with an SSD, completes a cold boot in around 3 seconds, and I don't know, I think that would have been cool to see on a setup like this. And so I cloned the HDD onto a cheap SSD I bought, and yeah, it makes a world of difference. After I had set up the setup, a week passed and then the controller finally arrived from Eagleland, and it's really not what I expected. My initial reaction was immense disappointment. Something felt off. This is an 80 euro controller and it feels cheap, or kind of. It feels cheap when compared to an Xbox One controller. When I fondled other controllers like the DualShock 4 on the GameCube, it actually didn't feel that far off in terms of build quality. And after using it for a while and comparing it to the original N64 controller, it did start to grow on me a tiny bit. The build quality feels like an original N64 controller does, and the buttons have the same click and have the same feel to them. And I guess that was what they were going for. Close to the original feel, but with the improved button layout and of course the Bluetooth receiver. But I definitely wouldn't have called it the Admiral. If I was branding the thing, it's more like a Commodore if you ask me. An Admiral would feel sturdier and be more like an Xbox One controller, especially when it costs twice as much as one. And the buttons occasionally get stuck in the press position, and that's just inexcusable for something this expensive. But how does it all play together? Well, let's turn it on and find out. So that was my little N64 Emulation Station project. You can make this type of setup for much cheaper than I did, but I wanted to splurge and go almost all out for my second favorite system, and I did. except for the console mod, which I completely forgot to do, I did everything I wanted to do with this type of system. It's completely hassle-free, it can update in the background and I can configure it remotely, and it doesn't have wires or non-controller friendly menu. It's perfect. The PC itself was €100, and while it does run like a dream, I did end up having to buy a cheap €6 USB wireless thing to get a reliable connection, despite the advertising saying it worked. And I did also have to get a DisplayPort adapter, which was like €20, which was also not as advertised, as DisplayPort and HDMI are not the same thing. The Launchbox license was €65 for the Forever license, and I don't know if it's intended to, but it works on multiple systems without any issue. So this is a one-time cost for something that I can use a bunch of times. The controller was €80 and part of that was shipping. It's not worth that. It's an okay controller, but at that price point it's absolute horseshit, and I don't understand how they can sell a product like this. And finally, the last minute SSD was a 128GB drive that I got for cheap for around €20. The total of my project came out to €290, which is $330, and yeah, that's a little expensive and around what I paid for a Series S, but as I mentioned earlier, it can be done much cheaper, and this video is, if anything, more of a how-to on how to make something like this, if you're like me, a fellow idiot who doesn't know anything. And I hope it helps, and if you built or have built something cool, let me know down in the comments down below, and until I see you again, bye bye.